Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited. Pam, you're on the clock. We got an hour. I want to talk about anti-aging. I want to talk about COVID. I want to talk about lessons. I want to talk about people that you're coaching and working with. I want to talk about the vaccine. I want to talk about anti-aging. I think I may have said that twice.
Obviously an important
Maybe
topic.
I should talk about memory. But ladies and gentlemen, if you've not met Pam Jacobson, is this your third time on the show?
I think so.
I think it is. Third time?
Second
time? Brenda over there yeah. Okay, we've definitely
been in
going to have
recordings together though, I think. Yeah.
I'm going to have to get more memory on my list of things to do. So for my friends out there watching, you know the backstory. My wife calls me and says, I have cancer. And God bless her, she's beaten it twice. And she said, I need to find somebody that can help me in an alternative way, but also understands like the holistic side, but also like actually worked as someone in the cancer world. And I'm totally botching the way I'm describing this, but you've been a godsend, right? Not just for my wife, which means for myself and my family, but also like everyone that loves her, but also now for like thousands of clients that you have helped and touched and, you know, informed and got people on a path towards great health and vitality. So thank you for being here. And I'll say it, because you just got your second vaccine yesterday. So we're going to talk about that. But Pam, for the person that is listening maybe the first time, who is Pam Jacobson? Give them a little snapshot as to why I'm so excited to talk to you about all these issues.
Okay. Well, my passion, as Tom has so eloquently described it already, is helping other people just to have their perfect health, their best health, their best possible health. And I'm especially focused on that this year with the pandemic and everything going on. But it didn't really start out that way. I was in conventional medicine. I was in the field of oncology, the care of people with cancer. And I had my own health issues during that kind of stressful time in my life. Mm-hmm. And that led me down a different path in terms of health. And I ended up getting a master's degree in Chinese medicine and practicing Chinese medicine, and then went on to study functional medicine, and that's functional integrative medicine, looking at how do we restore function, and that's where sort of anti-aging and all that will come in. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But over the last 25 years, that's what I focused my practice on, is working with individuals to figure out how to create an optimal health baseline and where functionally things have already broken down and what can we do about it before they would need me on the conventional side because they've got cancer, right? Because you don't wake up one day with a disease. It takes decades to occur.
Compounding.
And there's so much that we can do on the way there to prevent that from happening. So that's really what I'm passionate about. So
maybe someone listening right now is 25 and they're like, what? And then maybe somebody's, closer to our age, and we can remember like when you would talk about this stuff and they'd be like, oh, that's alternative medicine, or that's holistic medicine, or okay, she's gonna take herbs and shove them in my ear and I'm gonna light a candle. When did this become so, like, I'm listening to a Joe Rogan podcast and he's talking, like everybody I know and respect is talking about things that we can do to supplement, slow down aging, improve digestion, sleep better, improve everything. And yet so many people still look at it like, oh, that's just woo-woo. I'm just going to go to my doctor, give me a pill and call it a day.
Right.
When did this become more mainstream?
It's been happening for a long time, but I would say probably really the last decade or so. Probably more so with the demand of physicians, MDs in particular.
Sure.
That got to a point where there has to be something better than this, right? I'm trying to patch people back together after they've fallen apart.
Yes.
What happened to the front end of this? Where's my help?
Right. Cause and effect. We're only dealing with the effect and never looking at the cause.
And as an MD, I'm not given even the ability time-wise or anything to deal with that, right? I've got 5-10 minutes with you as my patient. I'm not going to talk to you about diet and exercise and all the things that could have prevented where you are. All I can do now is give you a pill or a surgical procedure to fix it, right? Or it usually doesn't fix it, maybe just patch it up and send you on your way. So, I think there was a lot of demand out there that there has to be something more than this. And it's been the last decade, because I was already practicing Chinese medicine going, wait a minute, this still isn't big enough for me. I need a bigger toolbox than this. And the Institute for Functional Medicine and the Metabolic Medical Institute and these organizations were starting to get, to a place where they were being accredited and vetted and understood by places like Stanford and GW and all these. Now, when a physician goes through a program like that, it really is a fellowship, a true certified, fellowship for an MD to take. But I'm not an MD, but licensed professionals in other areas could do these fellowships as well. So I would say over the last decade, but you can look back in the 1800s and see articles written about many of the things that are now just getting some press. I think the mainstream doesn't hear about it because where are you going to hear about it? Unless you're listening to Joe Rogan's podcast or Ben Greenfield or one of these other biohackers that are out there.
Tim Ferriss and more.
Yeah. You're not going to learn about it in where? The community, your school, your churches, your families, the places where we learn. It's not out there.
Yeah.
We still go to the doctor, and a lot of them know about it. They don't have time to talk to you about that. Your insurance isn't going to pay for that conversation.
I was just going to say, and that's a whole other, we can go to the whole history of friends of mine that are doctors that are like, oh, Ferry, you understand, I don't have time. I have to do 38 surgeries this week. And I'm like, 38? They're like, yeah, and by the way, I make 75% less compared to what I used to make because of insurance. But that's, sorry, that's not bananas. Let's move on. All right. Pam, only for the people that are watching, saw the visual that I just threw up there. So I want to ask you this. You've now done both. So I want to integrate both vaccine, but I really want to go lessons you learned, right, from COVID through the pandemic. We're at day 330 in California since we're going to take 2 weeks. You're going to go home. It's going to be fine. Get pizza, hang out. Well, here we are. Yeah. It's a little beyond that. What are some of the big takeaways for you? What did you learn? What did you observe? What did you watch? The people that you've coached, how have you helped people navigate all this?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, I had to really look at what was happening to myself in that process, right? I was, like everyone else, I got in a car every day. I drove to an office. Yep. I physically saw patients. I went from room to room. I did all these things. And then in March of 2020, I was done, just like everyone else, right? Yeah. So now I'm home. I'm sitting. I can eat whatever I want whenever I want if it's in my house. Yeah. Right? I can, my whole routine shifted upside down. And I think what I saw in my patients was many of them, especially new ones that were just coming to me, didn't have a routine to begin with that was healthy. Now they took a really crap routine and now it was really bad. Now we're sitting all day in front of our computer. Right. We have no transition from work life to home life. Now it's all just work. Right? Yes. There's no transition anymore, right? Yes. We have the laptop at the dinner table trying to finish up what we need to do. And all of our routines are disturbed. So sleep goes out the window. Mm-hmm. Stress, it's like stress response management. I had less time working at home than I ever had working in my office. Less time. Yeah. Because now I didn't have those natural transitions, right? The ride home to listen to the podcast, the time in the garage to take deep breaths before I went in the house and face the onslaught of everything I had to do there. All of that went away. Right. It was me, the chair, the computer, and the pantry, whispering my name.
Oh my God, this is the best ever.
Get me, right?
There's some Cheetos in here. I don't think there was probably Cheetos in here, but somebody listening is like, oh my God, there was beer there and it was 2:00. Why not?
And people are like, Pam I have chocolate in my pantry, right? So I first had to really examine, I think, what was happening for myself. Yes. And see how that would be greatly magnified in my patients. And I think the effort to have a routine became just that, much more of an effort than it ever really had been. Right. And I had to change what I was doing with the work I was doing with my clients. To that point, I was mostly assessing, running tasks, helping people figure out what was wrong, giving them a plan, sending them away to do the plan on their own. And that absolutely was not working at all. This was about, how do we implement now? How do you transition from a morning routine to the workday? Mm-hmm. How do you transition from the workday to the evening routine? How do you transition from the evening routine to bedtime? There has to be transitions, especially when you're doing all of those things in the same 1,500, 2,000 square foot space. Right. You didn't get in your car all day. You never got out of your bunny slippers. Mm-mm. You didn't. I have what I call Zoom hair at home in case I don't take a shower. I could put on my Zoom hair. I mean, it's crazy, right? Yeah. So I think for me, that was, it affected me the same as it did everyone else. Everything that I knew to be my normal was no longer. I had to create a new normal.
I love how you answered the question, because I was curious about the lessons, and you started with, well, here's what I got. Yeah. And you are super fit, crazy, just you're so on it with all of your disciplines. So I really appreciate that answer. Yeah. So the big thing is transitions.
Transitions.
So what do you recommend? I mean, there's a pretty good chance someone's listening right now that, their broker or their boss has called and said, yeah, you know what? We got rid of the office space. We're just going to go remote forever because this is kind of working. And they're like sitting at their kitchen table going, maybe I should have bought a bigger house, right? Or, right. Maybe I need another office. What did you recommend, or what did you do? What did you do to start making these natural transitions? Because that's a great insight.
Yeah. I feel like, because what it is really a transition for the nervous system, right? We're sort of priming the nervous system to understand that we're now moving from the waking morning routine, which to me, the morning routine should be all about preparing you for what the day is going to bring.
Yes.
Okay. So for me, that happens in the confines of my room where nobody has access to me. The dog can't bother me. Nobody gets to have me do something else for them. It's in my space. That's where I'm going to plan my day. It's where I'm going to do my meditation, my deep breathing.
Yep.
But when the work environment is literally feet outside the door and you can hear the ding, ding, ding on the computer, it was very easy to say, oh, I'll just go check and see who that was. And then it's, I have to sit down and answer. And then pretty soon you've done none of it, right? So the transition.
None of it as in the workout, the breathing, the
it.
meditation, the gratitude, the exercise. Gone.
I had no time now without
the
so the transition really is anything that involves the deep breathing, the resetting of the nervous system.
Yeah.
So it can be a little restorative yoga. It can be meditation. It can be 3 deep breaths and sit down and write a few things that I'm grateful for, or do some visualization. I'm really big on visualization at the moment because that's another thing that is easy to slip away and you lose your vision. And I'll talk in a little bit about what I think the bigger issues are with COVID, and it ain't the virus. It's going to be the fallout after,
the
right?
PTSD of this is I'm guessing.
Depression.
Let's just talk about it. Let's go.
Loss of
first of all,
vision.
I'm looking at my team. Like, can you relate to what she's saying right now? Like, I mean, living at home, like with.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So it's very real. So let's talk about it. PTSD. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth. What do you think is going to be the fallout of all this?
Well, you can call it PTSD is a good term.
Sure.
Post-traumatic stress. This has been a trauma that the whole world has had to endure for this period of time. It's affected all of us on different levels, but that's not something that just goes away because the world becomes vaccinated or somehow COVID just sort of falls into the background eventually. It is the fallout from that's going to be things like depression and. I think depression probably being one of the most
alcohol,
severe, but
drugs,
anxiety,
violence,
syndromes.
Anxiety. I know, and I'm not going to say names, but I know a person that has not left their apartment in New Jersey and New York since March.
Right.
Not left their apartment.
Right.
Like, how is that person going to transition into into reality?
Right.
And there's like 2 camps. There's like the people that are just like, whatever, who cares? Like, no mask, we don't. And then there's the other camp that's like frightened to death. And I don't see a lot of people in the middle. Right. I think there's just kind of those 2. Maybe there's 3. I don't know. You know better. But how are those people that are so deathly afraid? How do you see them transitioning back? Like, what if someone's listening to this right now and they're like, oh my God, that's my Aunt Sue. What can this listener tell Aunt Sue or work with Aunt Sue on to help her?
Yeah. I think, again, first of all, to have the awareness, because I think somebody who's had themselves locked up since March loses that awareness. True. And so it's having an awareness that this is ultimately going to be a really challenging transition for them. The world is going to come back to a place where we all are going to go out and be social again. You're going to be able to go enjoy dinner at a restaurant. In fact, you can do that in most places now.
Yes.
And, you can put on a mask and go out. And so it's beginning to take those small steps to reincorporate yourself. Maybe you start with a phone conversation with all of your friends and checking in, and then it's maybe a Zoom call, and then you actually go meet in a park where you can be socially distanced, but you're starting to get back out in society. But I think the transitions that we talked about earlier are important. You start in your own home in the day and start to break it down so you have a morning routine, a work day, an evening routine, a sleep routine. Because if you don't routinize yourself in that space, you're going to have a really hard time getting out of that space and back into the social routines and environment that we had before. I was listening to a podcast a couple of weeks ago, and the scientist who's really concerned about the amount of depression that we're going to see post-COVID was talking about a study that was done. He called it the caged chicken study. And they had done this study where they put chickens in these small cages, and they left them in there for 6 months. They didn't get to come out. They then transported these cages out into this beautiful pasture, and they opened the doors, and they expected the chickens to just run out and be gone forever. And they stepped outside their cage for like 30 seconds and went back in.
Yeah.
And he was talking about how this applies really to humans. All of us that have been so concerned about, the possibility of getting COVID, that we've stayed in and just cut off all of our social interaction, right? That will have a difficult time making that transition back, and that isolation and that loneliness. And so I think that's one of the bigger issues that we're going to see post-COVID. The other thing is the level of anxiety and stress, and the fact that we're doing less now than we ever have to manage that response. I think we're going to see a surge in cancer diagnoses and a lot of these diseases that have sort of an underlying baseline stress component to them.
Yeah. The misinformation in the early days, right? Like just, I don't think anybody was like trying to scare people, but I remember like walking to my office and seeing people wearing masks and thinking to myself, I don't have enough information to know, but like maybe they read something, and then like I remember weeks afterwards afraid to open a door.
Yeah.
Because what if somebody else with COVID touched, and like I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm not being rational right now. Like this is insane.
Yeah.
Like the misinformation, and then the people that, I don't want to say bought into it, but really accepted it as true. Mm-hmm. How were they going to cycle? I don't know if like your advice around like compartmentalizing and trying a couple little things at once. I don't know, Pam. Like I don't
it's
have
a tough
the
call.
answer. I think it's going to be, we're going to look back a decade from now, and I think we're going to look at kids that were in school during this time, kids that got out of college. It'll look a lot like, in my opinion, people that got out of college in 2008, in 2009, and they came into zero workplace, went home, moved in with their parents, smoked weed, and became real estate agents. It's going to be what, all kidding aside, you know what I'm saying, right? But like, there was PTSD post an economic meltdown.
Right.
This has been 2 years of misinformation, confusion.
Right. And still is. I mean, there's still so much that we don't know, that we don't understand, that there hasn't even been the time to study.
No.
Someone asked me the other day, why would you get the vaccine if they can't guarantee that that it's going to protect you, or they can't guarantee that you still can't spread it?
Yeah.
And I, because that's not information that we're looking at right now. We're just looking to see how effective is the vaccine against it, right?
Right.
And so, I think part of it is you have to take the initiative to be as informed as you possibly can be. To me, that means to listen to and look at what researchers are saying and doing, not the politics of it. And, that's where we can really get kind of led astray. But I think that
so don't get your news from Facebook. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
I wouldn't even get my news from the news, unfortunately.
Don't even get your news from the news.
Yeah, I pretty much go kind of underneath all that and just go straight to the researchers. But again, I think we have to start with ourselves. Yeah. Right, and look at what were we doing before. If things were good for you, what were you doing before that was working?
Yeah.
And recognize that you're not doing that now because you've gotten off track in some way. So how do you re-implement those things? For those of you where nothing was working before that, it's actually probably not a bad time. Many of us are still at home. Mm-hmm. Maybe we have a little bit more control over our schedule to start to build that transitional routine, right? And we've talked about this on other things. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's really pretty basic, right? Optimize your sleep. There's ways to track that. There's things you can do for that. In the morning, do your meditation, do your gratitude, get your day set up right, get your head on straight, then do your work. Right. And then end your work. This is probably the biggest thing in the coaching.
Talk about this, because this is exactly with all the people you're working with, these hard charging, crazy successful real estate people, and they're like, the day never ends. Yeah. It's 11 o'clock. They're doing searches for clients. They're negotiating. They're sending emails back and forth. Right. Like, help.
And I get it. I understand that's a challenge, right? I'm trying to buy a house right now. And my...
You may have just told the wrong people on a podcast. Yeah. Everyone's going to now search you out and find you.
It's not an easy thing if you're a buyer. I saw the line, don't worry about your buyers, get listings. Yes. I'm like, no, I'm a buyer, damn it. But I'll get up in the morning and have 5 texts that came in like after midnight of places I need to go see. So I get it. But it's an issue, right? It's going to be one of those things that does make your transition back very difficult. There has to be a beginning and ending time to the workday.
Yeah.
And I find for me personally, that's been more of a challenge during this situation. I think for real estate agents, it's probably always been a challenge. But what it does is it primes the nervous system to just be in constant stress mode or constant activity mode.
Yes.
And that wears down function. I mean, we can talk about anti-aging all day long, but these are the people, none of that stuff's going to help. And you're going to waste your money on all of it if you're not doing the basic stuff, right? So transition, use meditation, use deep breathing, use intentional walking, whatever it takes to transition from morning to work to done with work. Now it's the evening, and then to bed.
Yes. So I'm going to make a public service announcement. I am a dumbass when it comes to all of this stuff, right? What I am is I'm super coachable, right? So I find people I have faith in and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. And the reason why I say that is I want to talk to you about, like you said, breathing. I'm obsessed right now with the Wim Hof 11-minute, on YouTube for free. Tristan and I have done it. Tristan was like, he did it one time with me. And he was like, okay, I want to start editing everything right now in real time. Like it's electrifying. And all we're talking about is breathing. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I'm sure you've seen all the Wim Hof work. He's the Iceman, like he's super crazy. And I know he's talking about yoga stuff. He's talking about, it's not like he didn't own it all. Right. But what are your thoughts?
Right. It's one of the most basic, important elements of just human existence is oxygenation of the body.
Right.
And because we spend so much time in that stress response shallow
breathing,
never past here.
Out. Oh my God.
Right. And so what he really teaches or emphasizes is the proper breathing and puts you in environments that force that to happen. He puts you in a stressful environment, but teaches you how. It's really basically stress response management. Yes. How do we go into a freezing cold environment and not completely lose our mind in that? How do you, because if you can manage a stress response in that environment, you can do it anywhere, right? So it's super critical. But you don't have to go into the freezing cold to do it, right? You can. It's a deep breath into the belly, tells the nervous system that you're not in danger. It's the only signal to the nervous system you're not going to die any second, right? But we shallow breathe all day long because we're in a hurry and we're stressed. Mm-hmm. The nervous system, remember in my past podcast, I said there's 2 modes, death and vacation. Yes. You do the math. Right? So we're in death most of the time. So unless you take a deep breath, the nervous system's like, hey man, she's dying. We got to pump out the stress hormone, get the cortisol going. So he teaches, his methods are about instilling in a way that becomes second nature for you to breathe deep into the belly. Right.
It is. So if you haven't checked it out, you guys should check it out. Just Google or just go to YouTube, just Wim Hof 10 or 11 minutes.
He's a crazy dude.
And,
totally crazy.
And I love, like, Tristan, remember when he's like, if your hands are feeling tingly, it's okay. Right? And afterwards I'm like, Tristan, will your hands? He's like, yes, and my feet. I'm like, right.
Because you're getting oxygen in your body.
You're getting oxygen. Your blood is flowing. Your brain is going. And I literally tell people, like, look, if it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon and you've got a 7 o'clock appointment, you have to be game on. Carve out 11 minutes, lay down on the ground, do this breathing exercise. And every one of my clients that does it like, OMG, like this is bananas. And then they say, I'm afraid to do this before I go to bed. I'm like, no, it actually helps you sleep.
Yeah, because it calls really off that nervous system.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, all right, I want to go a totally different direction. You got the vaccine. You just, this is like yesterday, you got the second shot.
Yeah,
How
it was
do you feel?
48 hours at 10:30 this morning. So 48 hours ago, I had my second vaccine.
So you're still alive?
I'm still alive. I had a pretty good immune response to it, which is expected. That's what you want.
Yep.
I had the Pfizer vaccine, so it's the mRNA. So that's a newer concept in terms of vaccination, right? It wasn't the actual dead virus that was injected. It was a little bit of DNA coding that basically is a recipe for how to make the spike protein so that the immune system can recognize it. So they give you the first shot to prime the immune system. So there's a little bit of warning, something bigger's coming. And then the second one is a pretty whopping dose. And so then I think, I'm not sure what the percentage is. It's over 50% of people will have an immune response, which is a good response. It says the immune system recognized it and accepted it and now understands what it needs to do in that. So I had some, fever and chills and felt kind of crappy for 24 hours, and I knew it was short-lived, and it was.
Yeah. So the Facebook video that we all saw of the little micro robots that they were shooting into our arms that were eating, that's not true?
No.
You sure?
Pretty sure. Here I am.
Yes.
Pretty sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm kidding, but I'm not kidding. Anybody out there, if you saw that, I mean, people were like, this is what they're shooting into your body. And just like, people are such dumbasses.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not being rude if you watched that video and thought that was true. I'm just saying.
I think, I completely get it. And trust me, when they talked about vaccine, I was immediately following all of the research and the the scientists that are working on those that have made vaccines in the past, because I wanted to know how fast this came to market. Was that cool? Did that make sense? And it did, from the standpoint that making a vaccine is actually not that hard. That's why they can shift it now with these mutations that are happening. It's all the politics and the money that keep it 10 years out from getting on the market. So once that piece was removed, getting a vaccine out into the market wasn't that challenging. But it's, for me, I think for everyone, it's a personal decision. It has to be a personal decision. It's new. It is not something that we've got tons of long-term data on. There are going to be some people that may have a negative impact.
Yeah. There's no long-term data.
Yeah. But there's no, my bigger concerns with the whole COVID thing are obviously the depression and that fallout, but also the long haulers. There are a growing number of people who are not completely getting better afterwards, still don't have their taste and smell back, or still fatigued 6 months later. I have one patient who has severe lung issues after, and he's just not getting better, and he's a young guy. So we're seeing those kinds of effects. So the longer time out that we have, to research and to look at the data, we'll be able to see. But
I would strongly recommend, and maybe team, we should if this is on tomferry.com or wherever they're listening, we might want to link up Pam's earlier podcast with me where we just talked about immune health and all the different things you can do to up your immune health, because that would take us another 35, 45 minutes. And the sands of time are ticking, and I'm only through one subject that I wanted to get into. Let's talk, I'm going to go a totally different direction. Let's talk about anti-aging.
Okay.
Right? You and I were on the phone the other night, and I was like, Pam, I feel amazing. I'm like, I turned 50. I'll be 51 coming up in August, which that is not old, in case you're wondering. But I was thinking to myself, a year ago, I had my hip replaced, and I was feeling tired, and I was on the road, and I just felt like, I was taking all my supplements, I was doing all my stuff, but the transitions conversation, I think I was missing some of that. So it wasn't sticking. But all of a sudden now I wake up and I'm like, I get up, I do yoga, I do my breathing. I've been doing the breathing for a little bit.
But the yoga is a newer thing, right?
Only for the last year.
Okay.
Right, just for the last year. So that's been interesting. And versus going in the gym and trying to crank weights, right now, all of a sudden I'm like, how long can I get, and how stretchy can I get and flexible? And so I don't know. Is it that? Is it NAD? Is it these other anti-aging things that I'm playing around with? Is it SUPs?
Yeah.
But you're the expert. Like, talk to us about the science, and then talk to us about the now, because there's a lot of stuff coming out. But you mentioned to me earlier, it may not be here in our lifetime.
Yeah.
But give us some insight on that, and then let's talk about the now stuff.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, when you anti-aging, I would think at this point that it's probably one of the biggest focuses in the in the scientific field. For a lot of reasons. There's a big money to be made for the first market with something that can be truly called anti-aging. But I think where the science is at this point is really understanding even what that means, right? Because there's not a one thing that's going to be, it's not the Holy Grail, right? It's going to be multiple factors that impact multiple things in the body, everything from enzyme processes to mitochondrial function to I'm not the expert when it comes to all of those different possibilities, but I know there's a lot of different genetics.
Right.
There's going to come a time in the future where we'll be able to modify genetics.
Yes.
So those are all the areas that are under study currently. But but I think it's going to be some time. I'll be 60 in August, which is not old, by the way.
Yes.
And, and I expect to live a very long time.
Yes.
So maybe as I start to hit that 90 mark, we'll have some, maybe genetic modification available, things like that. There's some amazing things available to us now, things like stem cells,
right,
that are more and more being used, I think more mainstream for tissue regeneration.
I want to talk about that. That's on my list. I've been doing it, and it's amazing.
Okay.
So yes,
Yeah.
yes. Go back to the altering. You mentioned it earlier, and I'm now spacing, which is horrible. No editing on a podcast. You said before you talked about stem cells, you're talking about the fact that when you're 90, they may be able to go in and make adjustments to you. What does that mean?
Well,
give us some insight on that.
Well, and I think COVID is a good backdrop for this.
Sure.
People keep saying, well, why we're so frightened by this one is because it seems to impact people differently and in a way we can't predict, right? A young person can get really sick and die. An old person doesn't have any symptoms at all. So it's in this whole cytokine storm, and we don't understand what all that means. And really what it's peeling back the cover on is the fact that we're all genetically different.
Yeah.
And we have different genetic predisposition. Remember in the last podcast I said genetics loads the gun, but it's epigenetics that pulls the trigger. It's the decisions you make every day. So each of us have our own underlying genetic, let's just call it down regulations or mutations or issues that may or may not ever come to play in our life depending on how we tug on what triggers them, right? Lifestyle has a lot to do with that. Toxic overload, too much alcohol, smoking, there's stress, lots of things that can impact genetic expression. So I think the point I was making with when I turned 60 would be perhaps by then we would have the ability early in life to understand where our genetic deficiencies were, so to speak.
Right.
And we can understand them now because we can look at the genome, but we can't necessarily do something. We can't alter that so that it can never turn on. All we can do is our best possible job in lifestyle and but there's a lot of things we can avoid, like toxic exposure. Most of the time, you don't even know you're being exposed. Right. 5G, oh my God, is that doing something to our genetics? Maybe, who knows?
6G is coming. What is that going to do?
Right, yeah. So, it's those kinds of things that we can't control for. So the possibility for genetic, modification at some point is something I think is pretty far off into the future. Yeah. But there's things here now.
Right. But actually, before you said it, Dr. Peter Diamandis, who I had on my show years ago, right, who wrote the wonderful book Bold and Abundance, and the guy he's the moonshot guy, right? Yeah. He's like, no, Tom,
they're doing a lot of anti-aging research themselves.
Right. He is. He's like, we're going to live to be 150. That's going to be the new norm. And I'm like, it sounds so far out there, and yet all of the science, and you and I both know, which means all of the money is being channeled into this stuff because who doesn't want to live longer? Right. Especially if you can live an extraordinary. If 90 becomes the new 60. Right. Right. If 60 becomes the new 30, that sounds kind of good. Yeah. Right. And like maybe someone that's 30 over here, like Brenda, not even in her 30s, she's like, slow down. Right. Like she's like, wait a minute, does that mean I'm like 11? Right. Slow down. But there is something to that. So let's go stem cell, exomes, regeneration medicine. Like I did all that stuff. Right. And I have no idea what I'm talking about. I just want to be very clear, everybody out there again. Yeah. But I have great people around me, and I'm like, my shoulder hurts. I had that back surgery. I had a ruptured L5. I had a hip replacement. And my buddy Ed Park's like, oh, well, we're going to put 1 million little worker ants inside there to fix everything. And I'm like, that sounds good. Help me understand what I did. Well, to the best of my ability, because I'm not the expert. Sure. But stem cells that is kind of old science, if you will. That's been around for a long time. Actually, when you look at anti-aging medicine research, they don't even talk about that because that was kind of like that's already happened and it's here and we're using it. But the stem cell, I was thinking about this earlier today. It's kind of like when you go to Home Depot and you're going to paint a room, and you go up and you give the guy the paint swatch. How sexist of me. Women can mix paint too. Yes. And they pull out this can of white paint, and you're like, oh no, I don't want white. And then they take these little things, squirt all these colors in there, and it comes out this blue that you wanted for your room. Yeah. Stem cells are the white can of paint, right? They go in and they have no character, no reputation, no name, no purpose.
But what we're doing is programming them to become a particular tissue, whether it's a bone tissue or, we're fixing a labral tear in the shoulder, whatever it might be, in the hip. We're programming those cells to become a muscle cell or a bone cell or whatever we're looking to do. So that's what stem cell, that's what all the stem cell research was to see, can we do this in humans? Can we regenerate things? I don't know at this point that you can go in and order a new ear or a new nose, but you can certainly repair certain tissues in the body using stem cells.
Right.
And stem cells you can get from animals, you can get from the cord blood from a newly born baby, you can bank stem cells. So, I don't have all the details on how to get it, and it's, and it can be an expensive therapy still, it's still considered fairly novel, but.
Have I introduced you to my friend Chris Duma?
Yes.
Right. So Chris is doing stem cell, his research is he's taking the stem cells, mixing them through what he refers to as the Duma process, which is the patent process that they do.
For the brain.
Injecting it directly into people's brains that are dealing with dementia or Alzheimer's. And he's got 15 years of case study and all this research, and people are like, really?
Yeah.
I mean, but it's fascinating what's happening out there. Like you said it earlier, it's like, hey, genetics are like the gun, but it's what you do every day that pulls the trigger.
Right.
There's just other things that people just aren't aware of. That's why I love hanging out with you. That's why Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss and all these, Ben, just all these people that are like, have you heard about this? Have you tried this?
Yeah.
Test this. So back on your what works now. You were saying anti-aging science, and then I, of course, asked 30 questions in the middle of it.
Well, and you had mentioned
now?
exosomes, which is another big sort of currently in use.
Yep.
Not exactly 100% clear about, but it's a delivery system, essentially, right?
Yes.
So we can use exosomes to deliver things where we want them to go. Stem cells are basically cells that we can make do what we want in terms of tissue. Exosomes deliver things, whatever it is we want to deliver, whether it's a pharmaceutical or a nutraceutical or whatever kind of treatment. So those are things that are happening now. But I think for the average person, I first want to...
Are you calling me strange?
No, but I would put you up on the list of maybe more of the biohacking level, right? Somebody who does the work, because this is the point I'm going to make in a second. You do the work. So now things like these anti-aging options are not only going to be more effective, but you're going to recognize it right away, right? You're going to notice it. It's going to be the difference between two patients come to see me the same day, they both had stem cell treatment. One of them is going to say, oh my God, my life has changed. I can't tell you how good I am. And the other one's going to say, I just wasted all that money.
Yes.
And the difference there is going to be the person who did the work and the person who didn't do the work.
Yeah.
There is not now, and probably will never be, certainly not in our lifetime, the magic bullet that saves you from yourself.
No.
So my soapbox for the last 25 years, and it will continue, is you have to do the work.
Yeah.
Sleep, stress response management, exercise, diet.
Yes.
Right? Exercise. I mean, that's a category alone. Yes. Talk about the number one, and you'll get anti-aging scientists to admit, because they cannot figure out how to make a drug to duplicate the effect, that exercise is hands down the number one most important anti-aging. Now, but having said that, it's not just any exercise. Over-exercise can be just as bad as no exercise.
Bingo.
And maybe what you discovered for yourself was shifting that from killing yourself in the gym or those, and shifting it to something that worked better for your body, worked better for you, right? Bingo. So again, there's no one size fits all.
No.
But something that I'm really excited about with the anti-aging medicine that's available to us now is mitochondrial support, right? So the mitochondria is the little, energy factories in our cells, and some cells, like muscle cells, have more than others, right? So their job is to sort of pump out this energy all day long that particular tissue needs. So muscles work all day long, so they need a lot of energy. And it's one of the issues with aging is the kind of the dying off of or the down regulation of mitochondrial function, right? So if you're not producing enough of this energy, you're not going to have any physical energy.
Is that at a higher level than when we talk about like testosterone or NAD or?
Yeah, I mean, NAD is a piece of that, right? Okay. So NAD is part of what's needed to maintain mitochondrial function. So I'm really big on foundations and baselines.
Yeah.
So mitochondria is kind of like the baseline, right? If you don't have
it's like the white paint.
If you don't have your energy factories up and running, and they have to be constant, you cannot store ATP. It's not like you can make a bunch of energy and store it over here.
No.
You make it, you use it. You make it, you use it, right? And most of us are needing way more than we're making.
For sure.
And that's why you get things like gray hair, start to get muscle wasting, wrinkly face. Those are all signs of mitochondrial dysfunction, congestive heart failure. There's a whole list of them.
Sure. So
right?
how do I get it, Pam? Like, sign me up. Like, what do I need to do?
Well, actually,
but wait, there's more, right?
Yeah, it's not rocket science. No. It really isn't. There's a few things, but it's mostly optimize your nutrients, right?
Yep.
Optimize first and foremost. Don't pull the trigger on the gun, right? Do your daily work. You know, Dan Amon's been on your program so many times.
I know.
He talks about it every time.
Yep.
You've got to do the sleep. You have to do the sleep.
Yes.
Right? If you're not optimizing sleep, you're screwed. I don't care what you do. You can take all the anti-aging stuff you want.
And if you need melatonin, do melatonin. If you need, my wife's trying all these crazy, this melatonin versus that melatonin. And I'm just like, I can just, me, if I lay down right here, I would fall asleep and like not wake up for a while. But I love it because she's trying to figure out what's right for her.
Right.
Because when she has rest, she's unstoppable.
Yeah.
And when she isn't, she's at 70%. And 70% of Kathy's pretty amazing, but not as amazing as 100%.
Right.
So sleep is number one.
And I think that's an important point you make for the audience. Again, there just isn't there's no one reason why people don't sleep. But I'll tell you one of the biggest reasons: no transition to sleep.
Yeah.
If you just sat with your laptop in your bed and just checked your email and you think you're going to go to sleep and sleep all night, ain't happening.
No way.
So start with just a transition. Right? 30 minutes, 20 minutes, turn off your electronics, do some deep breathing, some light stretching, take a warm shower, whatever it takes to transition from work to sleep.
Yep.
So sleep optimization, stress response management. I'm just going to hammer that one to death. You have to.
None of my clients have stress.
I know that's not true because I work with a lot of your clients.
You do.
Yes, I do.
I love you all. We have eustress. We have eustress. It's positive stress. We're moving people forward. We're getting things done.
Yeah, and a lot of our stress is positive, right?
It is.
But remember, the nervous system, death or vacation.
Yes.
It doesn't know the difference between a difficult client and the lion in the jungle, right?
Yeah.
So it's really a matter of, and it's not changing stress. We can't change the pandemic. We can't change that. I am one of your most difficult real estate clients. You can't change that. What you can change is how you respond to the stress.
Yes.
But you can't change that unless you have transition, which is usually meditation, Wim Hof breathing, whatever it takes. It always involves breath.
Yes.
So if it involves deep breathing, it's going to work. Yoga, breathing exercise, meditation, biofeedback, whatever, Wim Hof, right? So
this is like, remember when we used to be able to go to Broadway plays?
Yeah.
Like the lights went down, we were told to turn our phones off, we were in a transition, and then the lights went on and the show began, and then there was halftime, right? It wasn't ever called halftime, right? But all of a sudden, now we have a transition. Right. Go to the restroom, grab, whatever you want to grab, then come back and start the thing again, and then it ends. And there is something to that. You keep saying transition. I'm like, yes. Yeah.
It was the biggest lesson that I learned. I recognized that when I got up in the morning and did my morning routine, that was the beginning of my day. Yeah. When I got in my car to drive to work and I got to listen to my podcast and I transitioned, then I got to work and I did an amazing job at work, and then I left work.
Yes.
And I transitioned home by listening to my podcast, doing some deep breathing. I always sat in the garage for a couple of minutes just to transition into home, and then I would do my evening, whatever that was. Could be TV, could be any of that stuff. And then 30 minutes before bed, a transition. And then March happened, and that's all gone.
That is the podcast clip that I want on Instagram. I'm just telling you right now, the word of the day is transition. Yeah. So sleep, transition, digestion. We've talked about it a bunch on other podcasts and other conversations. Do you recommend things like enzymes? Should we be drinking cold beverages before we eat and while we eat? Like, I'm going some old school stuff here. Like, what do you recommend?
Yeah, I would say digestion wise, well, first of all, your nutrition has a lot to do with that.
As in what you eat.
As in what you eat, right? So, it's really simple. 2 handfuls of vegetables, 1 palm full of protein, ample good fats in the prep, and if you're going to have anything else, make it 6 bites.
Yeah.
It's that simple for your nutrition.
Yeah.
You're going to get good nutrients from that. Gut health really is more about stress response management because you're not going to digest if you're in the jungle running.
Yep.
You're not going to repair your digestive system if you're not sleeping. The digestive dysfunction for most people is something that will ultimately probably have to be unwound, figured out, treated. That's where the poop test comes in. We've talked about before. But most
We've only
people
said poop now twice on this podcast.
Yeah.
Last time I think we said poop like 40
Lots
times.
of times,
Yes.
yeah. People call me up, say, yeah, that Tom Ferry, I want to do the poop, the blood, and the spit.
I'd like some coaching, Pam. And where do I send you my poop? Yes.
Yeah, but I've looked at a lot of poop tests, over the
Not
last
a lot of poop, just poop tests.
20
Sorry.
years.
Yes.
And I would say, yes, most people could use some digestive enzyme help. That's a big issue.
Yep.
Most of us need a good broad spectrum probiotic.
Yeah.
We need
What's the difference between probiotic and now my wife is doing probiotic?
so when we eat enough vegetable fiber, that feeds the good bacteria in the gut, which is super important. I won't go into that, but it's really important for everything we've been discussing, including anti-aging. But it's pretty picky. It wants a certain kind of fiber coming from prebiotic foods. You can Google their list. Strawberries is one of those, asparagus. But most of us don't eat enough of those kinds of things. You would need to eat a lot. 2 big handfuls at least 3 times a day. Most of us aren't doing that.
No one's going to do that.
And you miss some of it in powdered formulas, right? Because you're not getting the fiber. That's how you can take a beet and make it powder, is you take the fiber and the sugar out and you get just the basic nutrients. You still get nutrients, but you're not getting the fiber. So prebiotic fiber is the stuff the microbiome, your good bacteria, needs to stay healthy. That's the food that it eats. It lives in your gut because it gets fed there, not because it really does a whole lot there. It's for the rest of your body. The difference between a probiotic is actually those bacteria strains in a capsule form that you can take to, I call it fill in the blanks. It doesn't fix anything. It just fills in the blanks today.
Yes.
You still got to take it tomorrow, and you still got to figure out why you got blanks there to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So a probiotic isn't really a curative as much as it is a helper while you're on your way to, getting things straightened out. But
so circle back around. You said baseline. So if I want to, if I'm 30 and I'm just going to give an example. I'm 30 and I'm looking at my mother, my dad, and I think, damn, they look old, right? So you're talking baseline. Make these adjustments first, but let's assume I've already done all that stuff.
Okay.
So now I'm doing all that stuff. Like, what are all the things? Like, I'm taking all kinds of crazy things. Like, I am a little mad scientist.
Yeah.
Like, and I do it for 90 days, and then I assess.
right.
How do I feel? Do I feel different? As long as everything was the same and the test was a true A/B test before and after without too much variance in the middle, and it's easier now because of less travel, right? I'm loving it. But what do you recommend? What things should they explore?
Well, I think if you've got the baseline down, then you're going to be in a place to be able to tell whether or not those things are helping. And I like the system that you have because so many of my patients come to me on bagfuls of stuff.
Right.
And actually that kind of situation is problematic, right? That creates problems in the body when you're asking the body to do that much work. So I think you have to constantly be asking the question, is this thing I'm using helping? Give yourself 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. Do I have a goal for it? Don't just buy the line that you're being sold in the advertisement. And understand that supplement, just think about the word, supplement means to support. To support what? The work that you're already doing.
Bingo.
If you're not doing the work, you're probably never going to realize the benefit. I don't care what it is, right?
Yeah.
So let's assume all of that's good, and you're looking for the baseline supplementation. And I'm going to think about it from a sort of complete health perspective with an anti-aging bent in mind, right?
Please.
So some of the top most important things are going to be vitamin D, your essential fatty acids. Essential means that you must have it for life. You don't make it in your body. You have to get it from your diet. And essentially in today's world, that's impossible to do. So essential fatty acid come from fish oil. You need to have your full complement of what I think of as your micronutrients. So all of your B vitamins are critical for all function in the body. So some kind of a good potent multivitamin.
Yeah, multivitamin. Right.
But it has to be potent. So you're, one a day, it's not going to work. You won't absorb it, and it needs to be pretty potent.
Yeah.
There's some good ones out there, but you can talk to me offline about that. But a good multi that covers all that, your minerals, your B vitamins, your E, your C, your stuff like that.
And the answer is start taking it and test.
Yeah.
Do I feel different?
Yeah, if you
Do
don't
I
feel
better?
different, then switch up because you should feel different.
That's the key. Like if you do the stuff, you should be like, wow,
Yeah.
Like, I feel better. I feel more alive. I feel more excited. I got less sleep and I'm still jamming. Like, that's good.
Or we should be able to see the impact on at least labs, some kind of a lab report.
Yes.
So when it comes to, and a probiotic is on that list.
Yes.
Okay, and for most of us, especially you in the real estate industry, support for hormone balance, right? Your adrenal hormones, calming, balancing cortisol. So that's going to be what the energy formula was for level 10 health. That's going to be your holy basil, ashwagandha, rhodiola, all rolled up into one.
You know what they're all saying right now? How does she remember all this stuff? And I want to remember, you remember all the real estate terms and jargons.
Yeah.
Because you study it and
Because
love
you
it,
talk
you're
about it
passionate
every day.
Pam is the same way. Just another expert just like you.
Yeah.
So absolutely yes, right?
Yes.
Adrenals, because I think about people coming back from war or during war, or for us in business doing what we do, and having my blood work done before doing the summit and then after the summit. And it's like, did I just go through a 9-month tour in a major war?
Your nervous system
my
thinks
nervous
you
system
did.
is completely shot. And people are like, how do you feel after an event? Like, are you tired? I'm like, well, I'm energized until I stop moving. And then I'm gone.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's supplements for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So adrenal just balancing and regulation, every human on the planet needs that. So there's no reason why not everyone should be doing that. So I count that among the basic support that everybody should, be doing. And then from an anti-aging, standpoint, it's, when I think about mitochondrial efficiency, right, all of those things, your B cofactors, your vitamin E are all important components of that. Your fat oxidation. So, there's things like acetyl L-carnitine and glutathione. People have heard about glutathione. But here's the problem with glutathione. It's an antioxidant. You make it in your body. You absolutely have to have it for mitochondrial function.
Yes.
But the science is still a little bit sticky on whether or not when you take that, do you actually get glutathione? It's really...
I do it in my IV drips.
Yeah. Now, IV...
And I notice a massive difference.
Yeah, IV, glutathione, we use that in Parkinson's disease, right? So IV glutathione, but it's short-lived, and most people will not be out there getting IV. So it has a precursor called N-acetylcysteine, which actually is very absorbable and used by the body and helps you make glutathione. So N-acetylcysteine would be one of the things. In a good multi, you're going to have acetyl L-carnitine and acetylcysteine. You're going to have these anti-CoQ10.
Do you speak Latin?
I know. They're...
I'm like, I started to take notes and I'm like, no, I'm just going to listen.
Yeah. And we can post a list in the show notes or whatever. I can give you.
Brenda, let's do that.
I'll get you all that
really
stuff.
Good idea.
Yeah. Because there's a great article, integrative medicine doc Joe Pizzorno, just an article recently where he says if you want good mitochondrial function, just optimize nutrients. Here's a list. Here's how much you need to take. It's perfect. I mean, you could just put that in your show. I mean, and it's not rocket science. It's stuff that you can get any place. CoQ10 is like one of the most important things. Resveratrol, very important.
That's on my list.
Yeah. NAD is another one of those that's gotten a lot of scrutiny. When you take NAD, do you actually have more NAD that we can measure? A lot of what's difficult with science is some of this stuff's hard to measure. So, but it has a precursor called nicotinamide riboside, NR. And NKR, you can easily get nicotinamide riboside and use that. There are some forms of NAD now that are supposedly more absorbable. You can get it IV. You can also do it
a lot.
Yeah, you can also do it dermally if you've got an introduction system.
What's dermally?
Well, it's through the
versus
skin.
Orally?
Yeah, but it's challenging because the patch that it stings and it's not comfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's pushing that through your system right into the bloodstream.
For the record, everybody out there, so a buddy of mine, Peter, who is, so Pete, you're going to hit me the next time I see you. I think he's 75, and he could be the most fit, most just ripping, badass 75-year-old I've ever met. Like he serves, he's so active, he runs. You know who I'm talking about. So he and I text each other like, okay, man, what are you doing these days? And it was like 2 years ago. He's like, NAD, bro. Check out NAD. And I'm like, NAD. And I just happen to walk into the place where I do my IV drips. And they're like, now serving NAD. And I'm like, I'll do that. It took 4 hours. I did it multiple times. 4 hours. Pam, me.
Yeah, I can't even imagine it.
The good news is I made like 7,000 phone calls just with one arm sitting in this position. But I started to see a massive difference in doing that. And again, it's just been this combination of, finally getting my hip replaced, doing more yoga, more breathing, being more mindful of just stress and anxiety and letting stuff go. So it's hard, right? You start saying, well, was it this? Was it that?
It's all of it.
Was it this? I do get good sleep. So like all those things. But now I'm doing it in pill form.
Yeah.
Right? Like he sent me, he's like, his brother was able to do a 4-hour bag in an hour. Like that's bonkers.
Yeah,
like,
that's bonkers.
Anybody
I don't even know if that's safe. Really.
I don't. Right. I was just like, okay, you guys are crazy. I respect you. I love you. But for me, I was like, okay, if I can just take it in pill form and get the same exact result, and I'm still noticing that same thing, like that same. You know what it is? I did a live show this morning, and I said, we're all under stress and anxiety. We're all under attack, whether it's a competitor or COVID or your relationship is off. And the thing that I'm fixated on is staying calm. Yeah. And what I notice with all these things I'm doing is like, while others are feeling they're in the shit burrito and their first response is react, I'm like, assess. Yeah. Slow down. Yeah. And I don't know, is that yoga? Is it breathing? Is it NAD? Is it anti-aging? Is it, meditation, which we haven't even talked about? I think the answer is D, all the above.
Yes.
And someone listening right now is like, no way. Like, yes
totally.
way. Like, meditation. Do you know who Sam Harris is?
I listen to his podcast, Making Sense, every day.
Okay, so get this. So Claude, if you're listening, so one of my closest friends on the planet, Claude, went to they went to school together at Stanford. Oh. Then they went to India together because Sam wanted to go study 175 religions, and if you know his story, right? Yeah. He's nutso. And 2 years later, they're living in India, they're traveling all the world. Claude's come back. Sam went off and now has done 8 million other things. But it was just fascinating to all of a sudden see Sam Harris now into meditation. I'm like, okay, this is the guy that has like 48 PhDs right. who has studied every religion on the planet. And he finally said, this is the thing.
He came to the place where it made the most sense. Yeah.
Right. Like this is the thing. And I know like he's probably sitting in his house locked down in LA and hasn't left in, 330 days, but I know he's meditating. Yeah. What's your thought on meditation?
It's critical. It's absolutely critical. It is the piece. If I had to say, one thing that you could do consistently that would guarantee you the transition would be meditation. Yeah. Right. And it all of the answers that we need for the questions that we have, which if you let yourself ponder that for a moment, are millions of questions. Right. The answers are all there. You just can't get to them because we're stuck up here in all this activity. So, I see meditation as what it does is allows me to get below that, kind of under the radar, so that I can really get the answers. Like when I meditated today prior to coming here, that's where the paint bucket idea came up. Right. And I'm just meditating. I didn't ask for any of that, but it was there. It was a question I had in my mind earlier, and then boom, So meditation's critical. It's critical for transition. It's critical for keeping the nervous system healthy and well controlled.
Okay, I'm going to grab my phone really fast, and I'm going to tell everybody like the things that I love. PZIZZ, if I ever told you about that one. PZIZZ, there's two. One's sleep and one's Energizer. Energizer's for taking naps, right? So check this out. Like I literally, boom, start. I'd be like in the back of a car with my, my headset on, or on an airplane, or
myself to relax and recharge.
Oh, cool!
Right?
It's a good idea.
It's a transition.
That you'll not be disturbed.
Even if it's just for me, like a 20-minute nap, right? Which I'll do like in the middle of the day. I listened once to this Genius Formula audio program that Night and Go kind of put out. It was like the study of like the 12 geniuses of all time, and like it was fascinating because like Muhammad Ali was on there, and so was Leonardo da Vinci, right?
Right.
Every one of them took naps. Transitions, right? A nap is a transition, right. I also love waking up, right? I love sleep cycle, because that's to track and measure your sleep. Calm, I'm super in love with. Headspace, I have on there. I never use it. Yeah. What about you? Like, what do you recommend for people?
I like Calm a lot. I use Insight Timer. It was.
Oh wait, look, I have that.
Yeah, it was just old school. Okay, it was originally just going to be a timer for meditation, so you didn't run over your 20 minutes or whatever you were doing. Yeah. But it's turned into a huge phenomenon as far as just all kinds of meditations. I love their sleep meditation, group. So I use Insight Timer. I think tracking and measuring is really critical. So having some way to track your sleep, how much deep, how much REM, your, I know we were going to talk about all the things I'm into now, but something I'm really into is heart rate variability and understanding what that is and tracking it and understanding where I'm at, because that tells me, am I doing enough? Right? I have patients that'll say, "Oh, I'm doing 5 minutes of meditation every morning," which is great, and they're consistent. That's
better than no
great.
minutes.
It's better than no minutes, but there's a way to measure whether or not that's going to be enough for you, right? So it's a way for them to look at it and say, "Oh, okay, well, 5's not working. Let me try 10," and then pretty soon we'll do it, right? Because we want those numbers to line up, and then that's how you get somebody doing more. But
you're also like, I think it's so much about like everybody in sales, and I think everybody on the planet's in sales. Right, my 19-year-old's selling me
we're
on
always
why he
selling.
should have his own apartment, and like I mean, everybody's in sales, right? We're all selling something. I always say sales is a transference of energy. Right. So if I don't have an abundant amount of energy, or I don't feel good about my own energy, it's hard for me to influence someone else. Right. So I've got to spend time figuring out what can I do
that person
to
can
make
pick
myself
up on
feel
it.
good.
Right?
Of course.
When you walk in a room, you can tell who you're
Right.
attracted to. That's the energy that they're putting out, right?
So meditation, this Wim Hof breathing thing, I keep going back to it. I am obsessed now with how long I can hold my breath. Like that's the new thing, right? Like my buddy Adam, if you're listening right now from Texas, right, who's like this heavy duty, crazy smart investment banker, right? And I'm like, hey man, try this breathing exercise. And he's like, I couldn't hold my breath for more than like a minute and a half. And I'm like, oh, no, you got to go to 2 minutes, man. 2 minutes where the magic happened. He's like, Ferry, you're totally nuts. But it's a tracking and measuring thing.
Right.
I noticed the longer I held my breath, the better I felt, the more calm I was, or the more focused I was, versus maybe only doing a minute.
Right.
You're talking about that kind of stuff?
Yeah, again, you're putting the body under a certain amount of stress.
Yep.
Because you're not giving it oxygen in that moment.
Yes.
So at some point, you're either going to give in to the nervous system's constant hammering on, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die, you're going to die, or you're going to say, no, I'm in control here, back off.
That's
and
me.
That's what happened.
If you feel the urge to breathe, he actually says that on the video. I'm like, the urge to breathe. I don't know if I've ever said the urge to breathe, but yes, I love it. Okay, let's spend the last 5 minutes on what are you excited about? What are you learning right now? Because we've covered so much stuff today. And by the way, I think I only got to like maybe 5 of the things I wanted to discuss.
So much. Every day is
we can't do it in 5 minutes, but give us a little bit.
Okay.
Give us a little taste.
So I brought up heart rate variability. I think it's really important. It's something that is anybody
Should we start
can do.
wearing the band, or
no,
are we
you
talking
don't
about
have to.
on
You
Apple Watch?
You can do Apple Watch checks heart rate variability. Your Oura Ring. I use a Whoop strap. Elite or HRV has a little finger thing. So it's not that hard. Garmin, I like the Whoop strap.
I do too.
Yeah, it did come out a little bit better than Oura Ring and some of those. And
I agree.
I like it for the sleep statistics because I can wear it, and I just don't want to wear a watch to bed, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so I'm really into biometric tracking. Track and measure. It will change behavior all day long. So the heart rate variability is important. What that means, just really quickly, is the nervous system. So most of us grow up thinking that our heart goes beat, 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 beat. It doesn't do that. If it does that, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
It should be going beep, 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 and it goes up and down with the breath.
Yeah.
And what it's doing is getting messages from the nervous system, is getting messages to control the heart rate dependent on your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, whether you're in trouble. So we slow down when we're feeling relaxed, and we speed up when we're a little bit anxious, and it happens constantly throughout the day. And you can measure that, and what you want is a higher variability to the heart rate. In other words, more slow periods. And that gives you a measure of whether or not you're effectively managing the stress response, right? If you've got a low variability to the heart rate, you're going to be in stress response more of a percentage of the time. So it's a really good measure of stress response. It's also a good measure. You can use it for fitness and strain and that type of thing. Athletes, it's a big athletic track and measure. But I like it for the everyday person who says to me, I can't meditate, or I can't do this, and I'm like, okay, but if you've got something, because we're all competitive, and you're measuring yourself against this, I bet you can do it. It'll just take a little bit of time. Yeah. Right? So super important.
Once again, baseline, and then track and measure and get better.
Yeah, because you can tell from heart rate variability even when you're going to get sick or pre-heart attack, or you can see, oh my God, mine was. So this is an example. I got my COVID test, my second shot on Tuesday at 10:30. I went to bed Tuesday night. I was feeling pretty rough. And my heart rate variability is usually somewhere in the 25 to 30 range in my last deep phase of sleep. And my recovery can be maybe 60 to 70%, not based on sleep, heart rate variability. On the day after the COVID shot, my heart rate variability was 15 and my recovery was in the red, 13%. I've never, in the whole time I've been tracking, ever had either one of those be that low.
Wow.
Because my body was in a fight. My immune system was fighting. And so my nervous system's involved in that. So my heart rate variability, gone. Mm-hmm. My resting heart rate during my sleep was 94. It's usually 64. So but I was
panic.
Yeah, I was
just
well, my body was like,
right?
what the heck, you know?
Sure.
So so heart rate variability, I'm really into that. I think it's a really important measure. You can find all kinds of stuff online about all kinds of ways to track it.
Yep.
I'm really, really interested in the I said tracking and measuring, and I'm really interested right now in the brain. I'm listening to a couple of podcasts, and one of them is a researcher who has written several books on the right brain and left brain and how they're different and what the separation between the two, and then starting to look into that because I think another big hit that we're taking during COVID is the whole joy, spiritual connection, those kinds of deep connections, because many of us are just alone on our own out there, and we're not even making an attempt to socialize, right? We're not Zooming with our friends, and it's like, why bother? Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to take a shower anymore and look good to go on a Zoom or whatever. So I've been really curious about what happens in the brain, and more so from the standpoint that how could I help people anticipating this fallout that's going to happen. Sure. Listening to a podcast right now called Dear Therapist. Love it.
Oh my God, I got to write
Love
that
it.
down.
It's two therapists, two really well-known therapists, Lori Gottlieb and Guy Winch, and they're both in New York. And they, it's like an advice column. So people write in letters.
It's Dear Abby?
Yeah, it's like a Dear Abby.
Yeah.
And it's all kinds of stuff. My husband's dying of cancer, whatever. My boyfriend's having an affair. But what they do is they bring it online and they teach you how to, it's all about teaching communication on a whole different level. It's amazing. I love it. I think it's
I can't wait.
It's a great podcast. But for me, it's more about mind, spirituality. Where do we go from here? Why is all this happening? What does it mean for me, in the future? Yeah. That's been a lot of my focus.
So as we transition, because we've been jamming and I see my little hour is already up, but it's okay because you and I could do this for days. Yeah. First of all, everybody listening, thank you so much. Pam, how do they reach you if they want to? If somebody wants to coach you, they can call my office, right? Like that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But if they want to reach you and they're like, I just got a question, like what the person listening right now, or if you're watching on YouTube, we would go do these. Remember those live events, those seminars we used to do, and Pam would get up on stage and her and I would do a little talk, and then literally I'd watch, 80 to 100 to 500 people stand in a line and just wait to say, my dad's got dementia, what can I do about it? I got this little murmur in my heart, right? Like you would sit there just as patient as I answer a million questions on Instagram and everything else, and you would dissect and answer every one of those. I'm not asking you to do that now with 1,000 emails. Right. But if somebody legitimately wants to reach out, they want to work with you, they want to connect with you on some level, they want more. How do they get you?
Right. Well, there's a couple ways. I do a live show every Wednesday morning called 3 Things You Need to Know that, they can, and that's a great place to just get the space.
Facebook,
it's on YouTube. Yeah. And
Let's link that up.
I just interviewed the makers of the Subliminal Vision Board app.
Ooh,
yeah. So,
sweet.
It's a lot of these practical, what you can do for yourself kinds of things. So you can reach me through that, certainly through Tom Ferry, because I'm working in the coaching area now.
I love it. I'm so excited.
Yeah, so working with a lot of you guys already, coaching.
Like in a one-on-one,
on health.
One-on-one, helping people.
Yeah, so I
say
believe
names and all that stuff.
Yeah, I can't say names, but we're having some successes and super exciting. And I think that's Pam, your coach at Tom Ferry. Because I haven't used that email. We'll link it up.
It's probably P Jacobson at yourcoach.com.
Yeah.
P Jacobson at yourcoach.com.
Yeah.
More than likely. And if not, some person named PJ just got a whole bunch of emails.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So Pam, what I love about you is there's a lot of things. A, you're really good at shuffleboard. Yes, we played shuffleboard. And just the light and the energy and the wisdom. The thing I respect the most every time we get to do one of these is your curiosity is like insatiable. Like it's just like you can't
wait.
get enough. You ask all the, well, what if this, and what's going to happen if, and like, and for that I always want to say thank you, right? Thank you, because if it wasn't for you, my wife and my life and so many other people that we have impacted, we wouldn't be in the same place.
Yeah.
So
well, it's
thank
my
you.
passion and my pleasure for
Yeah.
sure.
That's obvious.
I
That's
appreciate
obvious.
you having me on here.
Yeah,
I love
we're
it.
getting all warm and gushy right now. All right, okay, let's go. It's time to go. All right, so hey, if you got a lot, first of all, if you're listening right now, I know that your brain is like popping. So maybe write down some notes, take a deep breath, maybe do a breathing exercise, a meditation. Who knows? Poop. We didn't even talk about it, but let's just throw it out there. But listen, my friends, we're all going to live a really long time. How you live is what the real deal is. And that's really what this was all about.
Yeah.
So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube. Make sure you leave us a comment, give us some feedback. Maybe you can put in the comments the questions that you wish I would have asked Pam, and maybe we'll just do another podcast or a live Facebook or something else to keep bringing you the information you need to move forward powerfully, because that's what I'm all about. All right. Thanks, guys.